Today's leaders aren't short of ambition, they're short of clarity. 10 years ago, most executive teams focused on around 5 major priorities. Today, that number has doubled. Leaders are typically juggling 10 to 12 major initiatives, all competing for attention, energy, and resources. And that's what we mean by leading in the fog, when the sheer volume of projects, data, and meetings cloud your ability to see what really matters. Because what then follows is anxiety, stress, and loss of control. We're seeing this happen more and more, particularly with the economic challenges we're experiencing at the moment and the fast development of AI and technology initiatives. And here's the key: changing structures or launching another transformation rarely fixes it. If the same habits, workflows, and mindsets remain, the complexity just grows back. So I believe the real challenge for modern leaders is this: how do we simplify not just our systems, but our thinking, communication, and our culture?
Welcome to the Leadership Edit, a podcast by CxO Steps, where we talk about what it really takes to lead today. Every episode is a chance to slow down and look at leadership differently through stories, lessons, and experiences that feel real. Whether you're driving change inside an organization or creating it through your own venture, this is where growth gets personal. In today's conversation, we're taking a closer look at something that defines ambitious leaders: how we navigate the tough moments, the transitions, and the mindset shifts that move us forward. The topic for today's conversation is leading in the fog: how today's executives can simplify, focus, and deliver real value. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host, Akansha Singh, and I'm so glad you're here as we kick off with episode 2. I'm absolutely thrilled. I'm delighted to welcome Alec Pearson. Alec is a UK-based certified executive coach specializing in leadership, team development, and business growth. A chartered manager with the Chartered Management Institute and a fellow of the Institute of Leadership, Alec brings a wealth of experience and insight into the mindset and psychology of senior leaders and CXOs. His coaching approach combines strategic clarity with a deep understanding of human behavior, enabling executives to elevate performance, enhance productivity, and lead with greater impact and self-awareness. A lot of leaders that I have spoken to or that we've spoken to have a question, and I too have that question, which is, what are the biggest signs that a leader or an organization has slipped into this complexity overload?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me along, Akansha. It's an absolute pleasure to be discussing this topic, and a great question to start. There are a few clear warning signs that complexity has taken over. The first is when everything becomes a priority, which means that nothing truly is. Teams end up in what I call permanent pilot mode. They're always reviewing, refining, trying to do it all, but at the end of the day, they're rarely finishing. So in effect, they're not focusing as a result on what truly matters. And certainly from my own coaching experience with executives, and interestingly enough, backed up by recent research, we're seeing that cross-functional processes like planning, budgeting, and performance reviews can eat up as much as 65% of leadership time.
Okay.
But there's very little progress to show for that. The second sign is meetings. Too many people attend meetings to stay safe, not to move things forward. And on top of that, with all these meetings, we start to get information overload. And I hear a lot from executives that say, Alec, my diary looks like a reporting dashboard. The third is decision fog, when nobody's quite sure who owns the final call. That leads to endless consultation and duplication. And as a result, it's draining and it slows execution down. But underneath all this, there's often a trust issue. When we don't fully trust the decisions will be made well, we add layers of approval. And this is particularly evident in larger companies. And on top of the layers of approval, then we have more oversight. It's a way of protecting ourselves but it ends up creating the very delays we're trying to avoid. So if your decisions are stalling, updates are multiplying, and energy is dropping, it's time to ask, is this complexity helping us serve our clients and our business, or just helping us feel in control?
That's such a great point, Alec. And it actually connects to something I wanted to ask you next, which is competing priorities, like you said. In a world of competing priorities, how can these senior leaders or CXOs decide what truly creates value and what's just noise?
It starts by getting clear on what really drives results for your business. And this is the big issue I'm seeing with many leaders. Most organizations can trace genuine value back to 4 or 5 key drivers. For example, growth, profitability, risk management, customer satisfaction, and capability stroke talent development. But every major project should connect clearly to those. And if it doesn't, there's a very good chance it's just noise. And in a tough economic climate, especially here in the UK and across Europe, that clarity becomes vital. When I work with leadership teams, I often ask them to apply a simple 4-step process to everything on their plate. Number 1, cut what adds no real value. Connect work that's happening in silos so it supports each other. Simplify what's left. And finally, automate the routine where possible, which particularly now with AI and technological advances is certainly becoming easier to do. But on top of that, the goal for the leader is to make workflow end to end, not just look tidy on a structure chart. So on top of this, once a quarter, I suggest reviewing every major project against those key drivers. So ask, what's the real purpose here? Who's accountable for delivery? When will we see impact? And at what point do we stop if it's not working? Now, that's often the hardest call to make, having the confidence to stop something before it drains more time and energy. Leaders can't always do less, but they can focus better. And that's the difference for me between being busy and being effective. Clarity, not more effort, is what turns hard work into results.
Thank you so much for that, Alec, and especially this 4-step process that you've mentioned. Already, I'm getting a lot of clarity around how to protect the focus. Now, you've mentioned protecting yourself and protecting the focus. Can we go a bit deeper into that? Like when everything feels urgent, especially for the senior leaders, how can they protect their focus without slowing down the execution?
Yes, everything feels urgent is certainly one of the biggest challenges I see.
Yes.
And as a result of that, that urgency steals the space and time that we need to think. The most effective leaders I know create a steady rhythm, not a constant rush. They deploy this behavior or this attitude of it's one small step at a time. They make time for reflection, even 10 or 15 minutes a day to step back and reset priorities. They dedicate maybe half an hour daily to their top 3 decisions or priorities, and they review once a week what needs to stop, pause, or progress. And once a month, they step back and look at one key process from start to finish. And they ask themselves, where are we adding friction? What could we remove or simplify? Now, for me, this is all about deploying the idea of having a stop list. But what do I mean by a stop list? We're very good at writing to-do lists, and everyone says, yes, look, we need a to-do list. But rarely do we discuss writing a list that shows us what we need to stop doing. The best leaders are doing this, and they make that information visible. And that gives their teams permission to do exactly the same thing. So protecting focus isn't about slowing down. It's about making sure your time and energy is having real impact. And when leaders role model that rhythm, the whole organization starts to operate differently.
I love how you put that, Alec, especially this stop list. I mean, I'm sure I can say for myself and a lot of other people also, we're guilty of, making endless to-do lists. But this is a very new concept. And I don't know about the rest, but I am sure now this is how I am going to start my day, my meetings each week of work. I am definitely going to, start applying this stop list. Interesting point, but absolutely on point and very helpful. And this ties perfectly with my next question. So much of complexity, and it comes from miscommunication or too many layers. What are some concrete ways leaders can simplify the information flow and help their team focus on what really matters?
Well, most of that complexity you'll typically find in your calendar. And meetings have become that, the default way to feel in control, but actually it's not always the best way to make progress. So I suggest a few small, but what can be powerful changes. First one, if a meeting is just to share information, don't hold it. Send a short summary via a team portal or record a quick video instead. If there's no decision or clear decision to be made, cancel or postpone the meeting. Keep decision meetings small, no more than 6 people, 30 minutes max. It's interesting when you typically have smaller time scales to discuss something, it typically drives more focus and effort, not just from you, but from the team. And always finish a meeting by naming what's being decided. Who owns it? What happens next? Because what you're doing there is passing on accountability, which is also good for empowering and motivating your team. But many organizations that have done this, and what I've just said there, they've cut meeting times by around 60%. Now, if you base it on the figure that we typically spend 16 hours a week in meetings, 60% is a massive figure. I mean, think of the time you'll get back. And as a result, they've seen decisions happen faster and with more confidence. But the other aspect is about communication, or more accurately, over communication. We've normalized the constant ping of messages and the endless CCs and emails as a just in case. It gives the illusion of communicating and connection, but what it's actually doing is draining focus. True simplicity means being deliberate. The right message to the right person for the right reason. But the final part is structure. Instead of focusing on boxes and titles, focus on how work actually flows from idea to delivery. When teams see the full process, not just their part of it, decisions get faster and collaboration improves as a result. So simplifying doesn't mean doing less. It means creating the space to think better and move quicker.
Thank you, Alec. Absolutely insightful, amazing. And that brings me to maybe my last question. And let's bring this to something more tactical for people who are listening, who want to take action. So we've spoken about simplifying, about simplicity. So how can leaders model simplicity in their own behavior so that their teams follow suit?
Great question. And I'm going to start with the interesting part of that, because what we see is that teams and others you work with typically don't follow what you say. They follow what you show. So if you want simplicity to be part of your culture, it starts with your own diary and your own decisions. The way you manage your time typically sets the tone for how everyone else manages theirs. So share your top priorities openly, and make sure that most of your time actually aligns to that. If it doesn't, adjust it, but do that visibly. Let people see that. Next, as I mentioned earlier, share your stop list, the things you've chosen to park or stop doing. When your team sees you're doing that, it gives them permission to focus on what really matters. Another great habit is to spend time walking through or visualizing the whole journey of a piece of work from start to finish with your teams. Typically, we work well with visualizing, drawing the picture, how it looks at every single stage. Because when you do that, what we then see is your visibility of the bottlenecks. And then it helps you remove those bottlenecks each time or through each step. But what it's also doing, it's showing that you care about flow, not the formality. Now, you can build these kind of areas I've talked about in small rituals that reinforce that clarity. So you can use a simple one-page scorecard instead of endless dashboards, keep a shared record of key decisions, and start team meetings with, here's what we're not going to focus on this week. Now, how often do we do that? but when we do, the benefits are enormous. So simplicity becomes cultural when people see that it's safe and expected, and it makes things clearer. So the payoff, what we see is faster decisions, stronger engagement, and often less rework and stress. But above all, and here's the key point, people end their week feeling they've achieved something. They haven't just survived the week, because simplicity isn't the opposite of ambition. It's what makes ambition sustainable. So to wrap up, leading in the fog isn't about slowing down. It's about cutting through. And when leaders simplify how they think, how they communicate, and how they decide, they not only get better results, they also build trust, energy, and alignment. Because in today's world, where change is constant and priorities compete, clarity has become the real competitive advantage.
I totally agree with you, Alec. And I honestly thank you before we move on. This has been a very informative, very important conversation. And I personally feel that I have gained a lot. I have learned a lot in this last 15 minutes. And I know for sure that after walking out from this meeting, there are certain things that I'm definitely going to apply. And if I have to say, the big key takeaway from today's conversation, it's pretty clear. Clarity has to start with you. First, look at your own calendar. If it's all updates and check-ins, maybe it's time to simplify. Time to use the 4-step process. Second, don't just make a to-do list, but make a stop list. Ladies and gentlemen, please start making a stop list. Be honest about what no longer adds value and just put a stop to it. Third is simplify how you communicate. Every meeting, every message should have a purpose. Like Alec, you said, if a meeting is not bringing to a decision, if it's not moving forward, moving something forward, cut it. Replace the meeting with maybe an email or a written communication. And finally, create rhythm, not rush. So a few minutes every day, like how you said, 15 minutes every day, and a short weekly review can make a huge difference in how focused and effective we stay. And yes, keep the meetings short, keep it under 30 minutes, not more than 6 people, and always have a meeting if it requires some decision making. Thank you so much for that, Alec. And I honestly have to say, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I cannot emphasize and keep going on and on about how important this was for us, for everybody who's listening and watching this episode. I feel like it's not just for the senior leaders, but for everybody at any stage in their organization, in their career. A lot of important key takeaways and pointers that we can start from today. And in the end, leadership isn't about doing more. It's about making sure what you do really matters. And that brings us to the end of episode 2 of the Leadership Edit. I'm so glad, Alec, that you were here with us. You shared your truly valuable time with us. And I'm so glad to all the audience and the viewers that you chose to spend your time with us. At CxO Steps, we help CXOs, future CXOs, and entrepreneurs grow with intention through tailored one-on-one executive coaching from some of the best coaches around the world, like Alec Pearson. So, ladies and gentlemen, visit www.cxosteps.com to learn more, and stay tuned because we will come up with more of such exciting episodes. So, see you next time.